Hello and welcome to another episode of Epic Events. My name is Candace Davis and I'm the Director of Event Programming and Creative Services here at vFairs. My guest on today's show is Evan Babins. He is the trend-setting global events producer, and I'm super excited to dive into event sourcing 101 with him today. Evan, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
I'm looking so forward to chatting about event sourcing and all the things. I feel like we have a lot of things in common just with our background and production and events and management and all that good stuff. You're like the king of it all. So before we dive in, tell us exactly what you do in the events industry.
Yeah, for sure. So I've been in the industry for, I'd say, pushing 10 years at this point. Don't want to age myself too much, but I've really been fortunate to do what I consider is to be a 360-degree view of the industry. And so I started off back in, I would say, 2005, 2006 in the AV production world. Through DJing is how I came into the industry. I then went hospitality side. So I worked for venues in the operations and event management. I then figured out that life wasn't just about 90-hour work weeks and I wanted a break. So I went agency side, and you're probably thinking like, that's crazy. It's even longer hours, but it really was a nice break from hospitality and venues. So I managed events globally for a couple of agencies in Toronto. I then went client side at Equitable Bank, where I ran the entire events department across the country, across Canada. Been to a couple other agencies in between. And now I'm producing events globally, virtual, hybrid, and in person for amazing clients all around the world.
Cool. I mean, that's a lot. Number one, hats off to you for number one DJing. That sounds like that was so much fun, but super grueling. And then adding on the hospitality piece to that, I think that's a really good place to warm up when you're getting into the events industry, is to start in hospitality. That'll rock your world and really humble yourself. I mean, to me, there's no one who works harder than people in the hospitality world. Come on.
Absolutely. I mean, it was like craziness. It was like Wednesday to Sunday event time. So like you were doing noon to 4 a.m, plus you were working Monday and Tuesday office admin. It got to a lot. It got to be a lot. And there was like serious burnout in there in those roles. And it just got to a point where I was like, this isn't what I want my life to be. And this isn't where I see myself succeeding. And I was like, the world isn't just venues. And it's not just, I'm not going to be happy. I'm not going to be fulfilled in the venue side of things, which is where I sort of started working on that path of that 360 view. So getting that like vendor side under my belt from the DJ world, from the hospitality world, knowing the ins and outs of as an event producer agency side, because that was my next sort of direction. I knew what the mindset was of people on the vendor side because I'd been a vendor for so long. Yeah. And you really look at events differently when you've been on both sides. And a lot of people who I talk to about this, they're like, oh my God, it's so true. Like you just appreciate people more. There's respect more for front of house, back of house staff and venues. You know, some people that are, and I'm maybe be a little controversial with this, but maybe some people in the industry who take advantage of those kind of people and, you know, only look out for themselves as the producer, you're not going to win and your event will feel it, you know? And I took that on the flip side and I was like, how can I, you know, and I use this analogy a lot, is like, as an event producer, you know, you are the quarterback of the entire team, right? You've got all the different guys along the line and you're calling the plays, you're telling people where to go, where to be, what to do. You really need to treat your line and your team as if they're one big team. And people who can do that successfully are the ones who succeed in events and who succeed in repeat business and being on those lists of like, I want to work with that producer. I want to hire that producer. I want that person on my team. And it took a long time to really understand that mindset. And so using that mentality of you are that quarterback, treat everyone the same way, it really has shone through in the events that I've worked on over the years, because it really gives you a different spin on the industry and you look at things differently.
Yeah, I could not agree with you more. I'm glad you said it. 100% agree on all of those things. And it really does give you that kind of advantage. Being in that place and then coming and see it from the other side is completely a different advantage point and a way for you to really give back and make sure those people succeed and set your event up for success too. I could not agree more. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah, of course.
Man, we're starting this out strong.
Don't want to be too controversial this early on, but I feel like it's, it's important topics. I feel like a lot of people shy away from, like, and I've talked about this on other, other shows and other conversations I've had, is like the respect factor in the industry is so polarizing. Yeah. And I've given the claim before that, like, you may agree with me or not agree with me, but the people who succeed the most are the people who can give and take respect with anybody in the room. And I'll give you a really great example. We were doing a conference this was maybe 2018 or so. It was a huge 4-day conference in Orlando. We had, flown in like a really big guest speaker to do a keynote, one of the biggest like acts at the time, let's call it. And I had never seen this before. And before the show started, before his session, he came backstage where we were all in the production area, front of house. He went to all the AV tech guys and he shook their hands and said, I really appreciate the work you're going to do today. I really appreciate the work you've done to this point. Like, let's crush the show. Let's have an amazing event. And then at the end of the show, at the end of his speech, it was like an hour or whatever keynote. He got a massive round of applause, like standing ovation from everybody. At the end, he came back around to front of house and he shook everyone's hand again and said, I really appreciate the work you did for me. I really appreciate you making me look good on stage. If there's anything I can do for you, let me know. And that's such an anomaly that never happens. Yeah. And the flip side to that story, and sorry if it's a little long-winded, but the flip side to that story is I was doing a different event in Vegas, and the CEO of the company, it was like a 3,000 person internal event. The CEO got on stage and we had done rehearsals and tech checks and everything. And for whatever reason, there was supposed to be a video that played during his presentation. He was clicking on the perfect cue. We got the cue. The video didn't load. The backup computer it wasn't working. And he literally on stage, yelled at the tech guys, was like, it's not my fault this is happening. It's the guys pressing the video player. It's the guys in the front of house. They screwed it up for me. Don't blame me if this is a problem. And it's just like total opposite, right? And it makes you feel the respect so much more when you've experienced it and when you know where the good people are out there. And it makes you want to work with those people and book those people, and unfortunately not want to work with other people. Yeah.
You learn a lot, from A-list to D-list. I mean, sometimes you're
amazing. Doesn't matter who it is.
Yeah, it doesn't matter who it is. So thanks for saying that. I appreciate that. I agree with you. It's not controversial. Come on.
Because some people have gone and like came on to me after like at the other shows and they're like, I can't believe you said that. Like you're going to put yourself in a bad position. Like no one's going to want to work with you. And I was like, honestly, if they don't have that respect and they don't have that respect factor, like I don't want to work with them either, to be honest.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. You've been doing this for 10 years now. Yeah. It's time to
shake up a few feathers.
That's right. Listen, I've listened to a couple podcasts you've been on, and you have some really cool stories and, where you've gone in your career. And I wanted to talk a little bit today about event sourcing because you are kind of the mastermind guru of all things event sourcing, and with all that you've done in the industry and for, clients along the way and stuff. Wanted to talk a little bit about some tips that you could give some planners and organizers out there who are interested in doing it better. So much has changed, especially with event sourcing too, that could be a whole other conversation we have just about pre-COVID, post-COVID, and kind of where we are today, in 2023. But first I wanted to start with just the basics of event sourcing, and then we'll kind of get into the nitty gritty. But from your take, your meaning of event sourcing, would love to hear that.
Yeah, I think event sourcing really comes down to, and again, it's like that football analogy that I used earlier. Like it's really about putting the right people in the right positions, whether it's internal teams that you're working cross functionally with or vendors that you're bringing into a program that are outside of your organization. I think it's so important to have, obviously amazing relationships go a long way where you can pick up the phone and call someone and they'll deliver for you because you've known them for 15 years or 10 years or 2 years and you have that relationship already. But I think even more so is like building new relationships with new vendors in new like verticals that you would have not used before. So you can, again, be the best quarterback out there and like have the best front line protecting you and delivering for you to get those results you're looking for. So I think it's about sort of internal and external sourcing. But yeah, there's like it's all about the right people in the right positions that at the end of the day, the client or the attendees, whoever the goal is to have that experience that you're looking for, is putting the team in place to make sure that event or that experience is done like flawlessly.
Yeah. And I think two things that come to my mind when I think of event sourcing and what I've done in the past is you really take a risk to source specific areas and certain needs that you have for that event. When you're used to using a certain vendor and maybe they're not available, you're taking a risk and you're trying to put your trust in a new vendor over here, So it's not easy, to do and can be hard and can be easy too if you find the right vendors who you're on the same page, the goals are the same and they kind of understand what your needs are for the events. But yeah, I love that. And a specific process or guideline, I know a lot of planners go at it differently, of course, but is there one in general that you tend to follow with sourcing where you're just kind of kicking off and starting sourcing and planning for an event?
Yeah, I think you want to sort of take your KPIs, your metrics, whatever you're trying to figure out for that event, and really like go deep in that. And like if the goal for that event, let's say it's a culinary event, for example. So the goal is to have the best chef making the best food that everyone will give a 10 out of 10 score on the food for that event. Like you're kind of going pretty niche on that topic where you can sort of look through, Michelin star guides and you can look through different, food and wine magazines and find the best people. But I think when you sort of zoom out a little bit and you're doing sort of end-to-end project management, event management, and you're looking for all the vendors across the board and you're on a timeline, because most of us are on timelines when we're producing events. We don't have, 5 years to produce an event. I think it's about getting referrals from the industry if it's in your market, getting other people who have used these people locally. Or like for me, a lot of the work I've done is in the States and I'm in Toronto. And so when I'm going to a new market in the US, I'll find like on LinkedIn, maybe like an event group that is local to Nashville or to Vegas or Orlando. And I'll ask, people in those groups, who have you used for, furniture? Who have you used for draping? Who have you used for X, Y, and Z? And you may not know these people that are giving you answers, but if they're in these groups, like they probably have some form of a good baseline of what they're saying. And then vice versa, if someone's in the States and they're looking to do an event in Toronto, I'm always there to reach out and like, this is who I use locally. So I think it's really important to use those relationships, use those networks, especially when you're going outside of your home market. And even into Europe, it's like even more important where there might be language barriers, where you're doing an event in Germany or in France and you don't speak the local language. You want to make sure that you're getting the best experience and you're not getting taken advantage of because you don't speak the local language or you don't know how they do things like in the nuances of what's happening in that market.
Yeah, that's a great point there too. That's a little tip. Thanks for throwing that tip out there for everyone. And you're right. Going back to trust and event sourcing, I feel like they really go hand in hand. And finding people that you're familiar with within your network, like you talked about, even if it's a different city, a different state, a a different, country, really kind of tapping into who you know and who you can find out who might be able to give you some pointers, because I feel like the events industry in general, we can all be pretty friendly, it's all like, keeping, people close and making sure, because everything gets around, right? So we always want to have that kind of mindset. So that's a great point. And, when we talk about event sourcing, we could talk about hundreds of things to source, but I want to specifically talk about events in general and venues specifically, because before, COVID hit 3+ years, I guess you could say.
Crazy to think about.
I know. Yeah. It feels like 5 years ago, and then it's a month ago. Sometime.
Also yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I know a lot of things have shifted with event sourcing over the past 3+ years, specifically for events, because you hear some planners go, yeah, the venue that I've always booked for, 7 years now, it's now taking, 2 years to get that same venue when I could book it 6 months, get it, kind of in and out. And they had a great relationship with that venue. It's just bizarre in some ways. And the cost, that's another thing. Venue costs have skyrocketed. Crazy. As far, again, hospitality costs, hotel costs, all of those things together. But what's your recommendation for selecting a venue and booking it, and how far in advance should planners be looking to book? And what have you seen, really, is what I'm asking here too.
I think it's really important to do site checks and site visits. I think a lot of people on the venue side, and again, I've been in that world, obviously way before COVID, so it was a totally different time. But venues change things around, from photos on their websites or, 360 tours that they do online. And especially now post-COVID, a lot of venues sometimes have downsized. Maybe some venues have increased their size. Like, I did an event in San Antonio in April 2021. So like pretty heavy COVID at that time. You wouldn't have known it in San Antonio, but we felt it up here. But the venue that we were working in, the convention center, when we had, done like our venue sourcing and our looking for, we were a trade show booth in a massive show. We had looked about, okay, where's the best place to load in? What time? What route do we have to take? We ended up getting to the show, and our logistics partner, who was driving the booth, because it was a massive, like 40 by 40 foot booth, so it was on like a tractor trailer, they had changed where the loading dock was from all the documentation online. And so everybody was like totally caught off guard, and they didn't even think to like email us in the vendor package, like, hey, we've moved our loading dock. We've moved our directions of how to get to the loading dock. So like, it's things like that. So if you can do a site visit in person, that's obviously ideal. Now, working out of market, you can't always do that. So maybe, again, you have someone in your network who lives in San Antonio or Nashville or Paris or whatever, that you can say, hey, can I contract you for half a day? Go do a site visit for me, take some videos, FaceTime me when you get to the venue. Let's set up a quick Google Meets or a Zoom call that I can physically see the space, if it's not affordable for you to get there, if it's out of market. In your market, I think it's non-negotiable. You should always do site visits, because things change and venues change, and the look of venues will always change. Like a carpet is different, and now you are banking on, that blue carpet to be part of your scheme and your decor and your layout. And now it's, a yellow carpet, and now it's like everything is off, right? So now it's like, well, I need to rent in a yellow carpet to match everything I'm doing, or whatever you're doing. So I think that would be the biggest tip, is like, wherever possible, do site visits, go talk to the venue in person. Obviously Zoom calls are great and phone calls are great, but until you can step inside and, take your measurements and figure out your loading areas and find the best path from the loading dock to where you're setting up, in which ballroom you're in or on the show floor, however the best way of getting there is, so you can relay that information to your logistics team or your internal team, whoever's doing that event for you. That's how you'll be the most successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed with that. And you've seen over the past 3 years, tons of venues get complete makeovers. I mean, outside, they can look, they may have had brick before. Now they have white brick, and, the whole thing with the carpet that you talked about, and moving rooms, and the loading dock is a bizarre one. But there's so many different changes that have happened to venues, especially over these past, few years. So always good to check on that. That's a great idea and great tip too. And then, once you have your venue selected, AV is another one we get a lot of questions about, especially with virtual events and then hybrid events too. But I know the importance of a good AV in production. I've seen a lot out there. But for AV, what's your kind of tip there for selecting an AV team? I mean, just selecting one, not, doing everything past the contract. But since you have a lot of experience with production, what are your big tips on selecting AV teams? Because you can really mess it up if you get the wrong AV team, who's maybe saying the wrong things or selling you. And the goals are different, all of these sorts of things. But would love to hear from you specifically on this.
Yeah, I think it's really important to know what you're getting into before you get in too far to it. I think with AV, it's sometimes it's an afterthought for events. Like, is it absolutely necessary to have all the lighting and the staging and the video and everything else? Like, more often than not, it's a nice to have. And like, let's be realistic. Like, an event can happen with a microphone and a podium and 2 speakers. It may be quiet in the conference room, but it can happen. So a lot of planners look at AV as their kind of last resort when they're doing their budgets, and they don't give enough budget towards AV and good AV. And really good AV or bad AV can really make or break an event, especially from my lens and my perspective. I have a bit of a I would say a bias towards AV because I obviously started there in my career. And, speaking that language as a technical producer, I know if the stage lighting is good or not from walking into a venue and looking up in their rig and seeing what's in the ceiling, right? And then you kind of figure it out along the lines of that sort of walkthrough in the venue site visits. It's like a lot of venues have in-house equipment. Some don't have in-house equipment. Some are going to charge you thousands of dollars to patch in an HDMI cable to the wall to use their screen and projector, where you can bring one in for a quarter of the price on your own. So I think before you get to a contract with the AV team that you're going to use, I think you need to know what your venue has and what they don't have, what they allow to come in, what they charge for. A lot of venues, if you're bringing in your own AV, they'll sneak in a $1,500, $2,000 patch fee to be able to plug into the wall, like power to the wall to power on your own equipment or your team's equipment. So knowing what you've got in your venue contract is super important before you can have the AV conversation. And then once you know what you have and what you can work with, then it's like, okay, here's the show, here's the stage plan, here's what we want to do. We want to have, 2 70-foot, LED video walls. We want to have surround screens in the back of the room for fill. We want to do a full lighting grid on the ceiling for the stage and for the audience. Like, you can get pretty crazy and pretty technical, but if it doesn't bring value to the show, like, just don't do it. Like, don't waste your money. Like, if the only person that knows what you're doing is the show director and the technical producer, like, what's the point, right? Like, if it's reasonable and if the audience can feel a difference and see a difference, like, I'm a huge fan of going crazy on AV and having all those cool shows because that's really my wheelhouse and that's what I love doing. But there needs to be value. There needs to be a purpose behind it. And if you're just doing, a panel discussion with 4 speakers and a moderator, you need a couple of lav mics, a couple of speakers, maybe a podium for the intro and outro. You don't really need a lot. So it depends on your goals of the event. So I guess the big takeaways is like, make sure whatever you're doing brings value to the event and to the attendees. Make sure you know what you're getting yourself into before you go down the AV road, and make sure what you're doing is noticeable to the people you want it to be noticed by.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, I've read in a couple of event articles recently that a lot of, things have changed from the perspective of the attendee wanting to attend an in-person event versus, I hate to keep saying it, but 3 years ago, they might have come for the entertainment piece and the lights and all the crazy things. Mm-hmm. And now it seems like people are kind of kind of coming back down, and they want space. Maybe they want,
Right.
the cocktail reception to be outside so they can kind of walk around and
Yeah.
not be in a small space with others. All of these sorts of things have come up. And I think just looking back at maybe what your audience and your attendees were expecting, 3 years ago, and maybe kind of reevaluate and see if they're maybe expecting the same things, or just kind of playing it down is kind of what I feel like where things are at right now. Maybe it's, cost wise too, but I love the big production. Of course, I think those things will never go away, but I think people are just getting like their feet wet again, especially people traveling and going back to shows and, trade shows, conferences, concerts. I mean, you name it. So I think those are some really, really valuable takeaways that you just added there too. What are the challenges you're seeing with sourcing at the moment?
I think it comes back to labor, always comes back to labor. I think labor since COVID is tough there were so many people that left the industry on the labor side across the board, not even just like AV, but like hospitality and, even like on the DMC side of things, like so many companies folded, so many companies just couldn't make it. And so you have this like influx of clients who want to do events, but the industry, I don't think, is back up to 100% capacity yet. And you're getting these companies and these teams that are stretching themselves so thin, trying to overdo what they would have done pre-COVID because they feel like they have to make up for lost time on the company side. That like they're like, we need to give our people, that trip that they lost out on, or those programs that they missed out on, for 2 years plus, and we want to do 3 shows, in one, basically. And like budgets are slashed still. And so it's fighting those battles between clients who want to do these big, elaborate, we missed out on events because our people want that, versus, like you said, people are like, is 100% of the attendees ready to go back on site yet? Like, no, I don't think so. You look at a show like, CES and NAMM and these like big shows, IMAX, like they're not back to their numbers that they were pre-COVID. I don't think they ever will be, to be honest. They'll be back to big numbers as the years go on and as we continue to prove that we can do events and they're safe and there's not like major outbreaks anymore. But your attendees' wants and needs in 2023 are not what they were in 2019. And a lot of companies and brands don't understand that concept. They think that it's still 2019 and they're like, we need to make up on lost time and we need to give people this like crazy experience. But then they start making their calls and the events team starts building the events, and you come back to your team with like a budget of like 1.3, 1.5x of what it was in 2019. And then you get like, whoa, we got to pump the brakes a little bit. We can't spend 1.5x of what we spent in 2019. And as an event producer, you're sitting there being like, listen, labor has gone up by 40% on the AV side. Food costs has gone up by 35% across the board. Hotels have gone up by 25% for rooming and travel. Flights have gone up by 15 to 20%, let's say, right? And like you try to pass that along to the people who are making decisions, and it's not always met with, well, as the event producer, like, we trust you, we like get what you're saying, let's downgrade, let's scale back, like maybe let's take our top 1% performers in person and everyone else in a hybrid model because we just can't afford it, and rotate who those people that are going on site every time. But like you can't, your mindset can't be events in 2023 are events in 2019, because the industry is so different for good and for bad. There's not just bad. Don't get me wrong, right? There's a lot of good that has come from COVID, I think. But people and companies who assume that your budget will be the same for the same product are the ones that get this like crazy shock when they get the budget presented to them, or they get a budget of X number and you're like, you want 300 people, but you can only afford 150 people with this budget. So it's that balance of who wins and who wins that argument. Like, is it the producer who's been doing all the sourcing and getting all the information, or is it the CEO or whoever is making the call being like, no, this is what I want, and make it happen in these, terms?
Yeah. Those are big challenges, and those are the same things that I've seen too. And now for these huge shows, a lot of them are going hybrid, and some of them are still free, for people to attend in person. And then some other people are going to a more paid model where you have to pay to attend, and then it's free for hybrid if you want to stay home. And it's really kind of stirred the pot, so to speak, in so many different ways with challenges. But on the flip side, of what you're seeing at the moment, on the good side, any of the pros versus like the challenges that you've seen, is there one thing that stands out to you that's been actually a good thing that's happened out of all the past 3 years for event sourcing?
Yeah, I mean, personally, my wife and I, we had our son in 2020, in August of 2020. So as an event professional, like, I was home working from home. It was deep COVID. I could still go to, regional, global, national events in a virtual space and not miss out on family time. And a lot of people are feeling that like they didn't realize what they were missing until they were given it back. And a lot of us in the events world were like, go, go, go nonstop. You're flying, 10 times a year. You're not home. That was just life. And that was, everyone accepted it. And then when COVID came and put a stop on that, people were like, wow, like, I can actually be this like amazing event professional and still be home with my kids, with my family, with my parents, like with my girlfriend, like whoever you're with, or maybe not. Maybe you're just by yourself and you need some alone time and you got that time back. And it's like, it's that sort of, conundrum now where it's like things are back open again. People are traveling again. People are in this sort of dilemma of, do I want to travel still? And how often do I want to travel when I was given back all this time? So do I want to miss my kids, first words, first, foods, first like walking or whatever, whereas previously you would have seen it on FaceTime or you would have seen it virtually. Now you've been given back that time and that space, and maybe people need it for mental health reasons. A lot of us in the industry needed that time and that space to be able to not have burnout and not be on the road all the time and not be working, 40 plus hours in an office in a crammed boardroom all day. And you needed that time to, over lunch, be able to go walk your dog or go for a walk around the block or go see a friend for coffee, where you couldn't when you were in an office downtown or whatever it was, that you had to stay on a strict schedule. So, and I think that comes back into hybrid events and the hybrid event model, where it's like, maybe I want to go to a 5-day event. Maybe I'm only going for the first 2 days in person, and then I'm home virtually for the last 3 days. So I get that sort of true hybrid feeling of, I get to experience what it is in person, and then I get to be home, not away from my family, away from my friends or whatever. So I don't think the hybrid model is going away. I think there's always going to be a need for virtual. I think it's gone down 100% from 2020 and 2021. But I think people who can still do virtual successful are ones that are really doing a great job and are keeping the engagement and are able to sort of carve out that sort of niche market where you're looking for people to take time out of their day at home, where there's so many distractions, where you don't have that on site. So it's a little bit of both sides, where, you want to give people what they're comfortable doing. You want to give people options. I think that's a big word that a lot of people are talking about, is like options and flexibility. And even like in the sustainability world, it's like, it's not as sustainable to fly to a show where it is to stay home and watch on your computer. People are talking about like carbon offset and your carbon footprint and all those, buzzwords that are going on these days. But it really comes back to, if you're going to do a virtual event, if you're going to do a hybrid event, you really need to be super cognizant on who you're sourcing and what you're sourcing, because you need to keep people's attention a lot harder than if they're in person in the ballroom on site. So, I think it comes back to who you're doing and like what you're sourcing and where you're sourcing and all that stuff.
Yeah, I agree. And that time that we've gotten over these past 3 years is so valuable. I mean, you can't put a price tag on that, you know, and
Yeah.
we were fortunate to have a little girl in 2019, you know, just a few months before COVID happened in late 2019 when she was born. And then when COVID happened in March. And the time that we were able to spend together past, you know, the maternity leave and all of that kind of was super invaluable. I mean, and still to this day, you know, I work remote. I have that ability to still be with her and drop her off at school and pick her up and all the things that I might not have been able to do before, you know, going to an office 5 days a week. So I really appreciate the flexibility and all the things, the advantages that have come to us for all the reasons that you mentioned too, has been super valuable. And just, you know, on that note with sourcing, I mean, planners and organizers, no one saw, you know, this sort of thing happen with COVID. So talking about sourcing specifically, I think, you know, planners now have to think about DR. Like, what is this, you know, disaster recovery plan that we need to have in place for this event? And I think it's kind of open eyes of planners moving forward too. If something like this were to happen, knock on wood that it doesn't, but never know. Exactly. And to always have a backup and to have something already kind of sourced and kind of thought out. No one probably wants to hear that, but it's always a good option because if planners and organizers would have seen all this coming, they would have sourced out, you know, a platform to do a sort of hybrid piece or to kind of wait or whatever that might have been for their plan. So that's another thing to throw in for sourcing.
I remember it's so funny when COVID first hit, and I don't want to go too much into COVID talk because I think people are tired of it, but I'll show you one quick story. I was at the bank at that point, and I remember getting a call from maybe it was the CMO or one super high level executive, and we were supposed to do our town hall on April 1st, I think it was 2020, and we had been planning since November, right? Like getting people speeches, we had a venue, we had everything was set up, it was all done, and then you know. My wife and I went to Florida for vacation, March 2nd or something we left. We came home like March 11th and the world shut down like 3 days later. And I remember coming home, getting this phone call the day that sort of it happened. And the call was basically like, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this event? We have everybody coming in from across the country for this event. Like, what's the plan? And it was literally like, COVID happened Friday. Like we all went home from work on Friday thinking we'd be home for 2 weeks. And then Monday was this phone call. And I was like, honestly, I don't know the answer at this point. Like give me a few days to like process and figure out and whatever. And we were using Microsoft Teams for our internal like communication instead of Slack, which I'm not a fan of. I hope no one objects to that, me saying that. But I don't like Teams at all. But Microsoft Teams built in already pre-COVID, they had this live event module that you could add on to your corporate account as like a webcasting module within Teams. And so the first thought we had was like, we already have the software. Everyone knows how to use the software already. How hard would it be to add this onto our like corporate plan and just do the event on Teams? And so that's literally what we did. So we had all the executives, we like did a fake live event. So we pre-recorded their speeches, their updates, their like town hall, you know, whatever. We stitched it all together in a video. The entire company was like 650 people at the time. Everybody dialed in to this live event that we had set up on Teams. And we hit play on the video, and it was like a welcome video. It was like all about the team and staying together, and we're taking care of you and manage the risks and all that verbiage that we talked about in April of 2020. And then it was this, what people thought was this live event that had all the presenters doing all their speeches with their PowerPoint decks and everything else as if it was happening in person, but it looked like they were all at home calling in live to the show. And I tell that story because not only was it like we had so much information coming towards us at that time, there were so many companies popping up that was like, we can do live streaming, we can do virtual events, we can do this. I had been planning virtual events since 2017 at previous companies. And so I had the relationships outside of Teams, like Microsoft Teams, with a company that's actually based in the US that had been doing live streaming for me for hundreds of thousands of people for 3 years before. And so after that event, it was like, okay, what are we going to do now? How do we like top that? And so we brought them in like right away. And we did like probably 10 events between April 1st and the end of April 2020, all in a virtual platform, because we had this knowledge from previous vendors, previous relationships that was so valuable at the time that we weren't learning what a virtual event was, how to do a virtual event, how do you plan for that. As a producer, like that was the biggest learning curve of 2020 was event producers became video producers. And having those connections and having those vendors and those contacts made that learning curve so much easier and so much quicker. And so it comes back again to that, those relationships, the networking, having the right people that you can call. And it was just like a month of pure chaos. Mm-hmm. But it was crazy. And now we're here and we're in person again.
There you go. Moral to the story, keep building those relationships within your network.
You can't have enough network.
Yeah. Stay close with those people, be good to them.
Yeah.
Wow. So insightful, Evan. I really appreciate you being on this episode, talking about event sourcing, and good luck to all the planners and organizers out there listening to this as we continue to plan for 2023, 24. And it's crazy to think past this year, but people are doing it. Before we end the episode, where can our listeners find you?
Yeah, LinkedIn, I'm all over the place. I post a lot. I comment on other people's posts a lot. I'm always happy to chat events with like-minded people. My inbox is always open. Feel free to reach out or, schedule a call or just chat, post a comment on my posts. I'm always happy to talk with like-minded people. So I'm everywhere. Instagram, LinkedIn, all over the place.
Yeah, you really are everywhere. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being on the episode. And for all of you listeners out there, go and find Evan. He's a lot of fun to talk with. Evan, it's been so much fun chatting with you. We could chat for hours just on this topic.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. And many thanks to everyone tuning in and listening to this podcast. Many more episodes are coming up. And if you're interested in chatting with us here at vFairs, we'd love to talk to you. Our email is sales@vfairs.com. But until the next episode, peace, love, events. Bye, y'all.